replacing plumbing, copper line to PEX, and thoughts on long-term use of shark bites. Doing lots of plumbing work on my recently bought first house. I've used shark bites in easily accessible areas like under sinks and whatnot. But now I'm moving on to a bigger issue. I have one long run of hot and cold in the crawl space, that's old galvanized steel line that I want replaced. The water that initially comes out of that particular line is brown. And in cutting a part of it out, it's indeed really disgusting on the inside and significantly restricting the flow. Oh, and the galvanized is just welded straight to the copper on one end. I want to replace the galvanized with PEX. But I have no experience with welding or sweating pipes together. The shark bites from copper to PEX seems very easy. A little too easy. I want it to last as long as the PEX does. And it will be in an extremely inconvenient area in my crawl space to keep an eye on it. Are shark bites good long term if used properly? I recently got some quotes for a smaller portion of this line where the plumber was going to use shark bites and PEX. But I'd just like some other thoughts. Edit update. Thanks for all the replies and some solid discussion. Just FYI. After reading all the comments and watching some YouTube videos, I think I'm going to practice sweating some copper PEX fittings to copper pipe I actually have most of what's needed for soldering already. If I can get confident with that, I'll go with that option. Otherwise, shark bite to replace where my two galvanized lines come out of the existing copper line. I'll insulate those shark bites as well since it will be under the house and of course attach it. Right. Also helpful was the PEX discussion. Going to go with PEX B for new lines as I'd like to keep the tools around for future use and don't want to spend the $500 on a PEX A tool. Probably oversize the PEX B line as any fittings for B reduce the size and flow and my run will be fairly long. Also, maybe I'm overthinking it, but I read PEX A may have a slightly higher chance of leaking some chemicals into the line, according to some California standards. I replaced copper lines with PEX and shark bites in a cabin 8 years ago. No issues thus far. I think that most of the negative comments directed at push connectors are from bitter plumbers who once had a monopoly on plumbing repairs. I have used them for over 10 years in many situations and have never had a problem or call back. They've been used a lot for the past 20-ish years and there hasn't been major issues with most of them. The only people who say not to use PEX are some plumbers who seem to be bitter that a lot of things can easily be dyed now. Then again, PEX hasn't been out long enough to see how it lasts 50 years. I installed one to fix a pinhole leak in a hot water line 10 years ago. Never had a problem. Also have one going from copper to PEX on the 3/4 line for the hose outside. 9 years. No leaks there. And it's above ground and exposed to freezing temps. If it's an old house, make sure that nothing is grounded to your water pipes. I've installed multiple long-term shark bite push connect fittings. Some in place over 15 years now, adjacent to a clothes washer that inflicts some serious water hammer. And never had an issue. Connections have been a mix of CU PEX, CU and PEX. Regardless of if they'll hold. Wider it. You'll spend a lot more money for little benefit. Get a crimping tool and crimp connections. They're fast and easy. PEX can be done more reliably and cheaply with the crimped-on clamp fittings. You might like them. Under-house leaks are a real disaster. I've never used shark bites myself. But when I replumbed a back house last year I used PEX A, which came in a lot cheaper and was a breeze to install. Also pretty frost resistant as compared to the old steel and copper pipes. I don't really see any downsides to it. I've installed hundreds of them and have never had a single problem. I replaced the majority of the plumbing in my 100-year-old house about a year and a half ago with PEX and the plug-in conversions. 100 no issues and I check regularly. No previous plumbing experience. My wife's retired dad is a building inspector and gave it a thumbs up after I was done. Doing lots of plumbing work. Bite the bullet and get a crimper. SharkBites are rated for 25 years. PEX is rated for 50. You do the math on that one. They seem to hold up a long time. They are not reusable if they've been installed a long time though. The O-rings seem to deteriorate or something. Once removed after a long-term use, throw them away. Replaced all of the copper in my 100-year-old house in Michigan with PEX and SharkBites around 2008. And haven't had any issues. One major plus I noticed was that the copper was acting as a heat sink of sorts and would noticeably cool the hot water by the time it reached the tap. And that effect with PEX is no more. Good luck. Not sure of how long they last. But I'm an idiot. And if I can install SharkBites to PEX without issues, then anyone can. It's been 7 years and no leaks so far. Had a similar situation. Buy a crimp or cinch ring system for all of the joints you can. Transitioning from copper to PEX basically requires push connect unless you sweat joints. If push can all be kept in crawl, then use them without a second thought and check on them every few years if it helps you sleep. A leak-ins crawl isn't the end of the world. You shouldn't lose any sleep for 25 years though. IMO. I know lots of plumbers that like SharkBite fittings except the old-fashioned ones that fell. They are master copper solderers. SharkBite fittings are the way to go. If your crawl space can be accessed by rodents, be aware those little bastards love to eat PEX and no one knows why. I've done this. You just got to make sure the ends of pipe going into the SharkBites are super even and smooth. And you're golden. Just make it a point to be very picky about that. After using a bunch of them in accessible areas almost 10 years ago, I've had just one that started leaking at a copper to PEX connection, and I'm very glad it happened. In a visible area, unfinished basement. I would probably just say get the correct PEX tools and avoid them if you have many fittings. If you use the SharkBites, then just be sure to make it as clean and square of a cut as possible on the pipe ends, and I think that helps a lot. Lots of great comments here about how it's pretty easy to use PEX and SharkBites seem to last pretty long. But also, sweating copper isn't that hard. I sweated copper for my first time on my water main. And it's still holding. Plumber here. SharkBites are fine and easy to install. Just test the line before sealing up the wall. You won't have the pressure going through that line that would require you to solder it. A lot more projects are switching to SharkBites BC. They are reliable. SharkBites are proven reliable and approved by code to be used behind drywall without access panels. My only caution would be to support the PEX pipe properly and make sure the pipe doesn't flex much at connections. I'd add extra supports around connections. I have only had one leak. And it was a connection that was just hanging. I believe it likely bounced a bit when water was turned on and off over time. Make sure you use the inserts when you guys replace copper with PEX. Do you add jumpers to maintain an electrical connection for grounding?